Hello everyone, this is Chris9017 here. Long time no see, and today we're going to be doing a review on this limited edition Great Locomotive Chase set and also this Grizzly Flats Railroad train set. We'll start with the Great Locomotive train set from Lionel. Sometime back in 2012, the Lionel Collectors Club of America issued this limited edition set consisting of these two classic Lionel Generals, one being a replica of the famous General locomotive, and the other being a replica of the famous Texas locomotive. There's also this certificate of authenticity, and there's also a story of the Great Locomotive Chase itself. Only about 650 units of these were sold, and it was only made available to the Lionel Collectors Club of America. So this is quite the collector's item. I found this on eBay for a really good price, and both these Generals are stunning models. They come with crew talk, rail sounds, as well as the beautiful finishes you see on there. Now, if you don't know what the Great Locomotive Chase is, I'll give you a summary of the story of what really happened. This took place during the Civil War back in 1862, at which time Union soldiers went down south to Georgia and they hijacked one of the Western and Atlantic Railroad's locomotives, the General. This happened when the Union soldiers were on the train bound north, and when the train made its stop in Big Shanning, while everyone got off to eat dinner, the Union soldiers, led by James J. Andrews, hijacked the locomotive. This made conductor William A. Fuller hoppin' mad. He was literally the conductor of that train, and he pursued the General on foot, then by pushcart. He then attempted to pursue the General by taking two locomotives, one called the Old Yonah, I believe that's the name, and the other one, I believe, can't remember the first name, but the last name was Smith of the second engine. James J. Andrews tried to sabotage the Western and Atlantic Railroad. He and his men tried cutting the telegraph lines, pulling up some of the rail, and burning some of the bridges. That plan backfired because William A. Fuller managed to keep up, and because of the rain, the bridges wouldn't burn. William A. Fuller eventually got a hold of the Texas locomotive, and he pursued the General by having engineer Pete Brackett run the Texas locomotive in reverse. Eventually, the General locomotive runs out of fuel just 18 miles shy of Chattanooga, Tennessee. At which time William A. Fuller caught up with the General, and James J. Andrews' men were caught and then hung for their crimes of stealing the General locomotive. This was most definitely a way that was going to hopefully speed up ending the Civil War, but it backfired. Not many survivors made it back home to the Union, but those that did were seen as heroes. Now you can see these are beautiful locomotives, and although the paint scheme of the Texas you see here may not be very accurate, you can see it's a very stunning model. You can see this beautiful brass plated plastic, beautiful dark burgundy color, beautiful nameplate of the Texas and its number 49, beautiful front number plate, and the tender is fully loaded with rail sounds. The engine also comes with a working smoke generator, working headlight, and included in the rail sounds is realistic bell, chuff, and whistle. Back in 1956, the Walt Disney Company made a movie of the Great Locomotive Chase using the famous William Mason locomotive that played the General and the famous Inyo locomotive that played the Texas. In these rail sounds, the General has a 3-chime whistle that sounds almost exactly identical to the 3-chime whistle that was worn by the William Mason locomotive during the filming of the Great Locomotive Chase. And the Texas has a single-chime whistle that sounds almost identical to the Inyos during the filming of the Great Locomotive Chase. So they sound pretty accurate. And if you can see the General here, her paint scheme is pretty much bang on with how she looks today. You can see this amazing paintwork she's got on her, the amazing nameplate, beautiful painted bell bracket, beautiful front number plate, beautiful painted red wheels, beautiful painted cab, beautiful plated brass domes and whistle. And you can see that the tender is beautifully striped and the wheels are painted nickel plated. Everything is done very crisp. These are probably the most stunning Lionel Generals I've ever seen. And I have a huge collection of Lionel Generals since I'm a collector of O-scale. It's a classic locomotive. My favorite Lionel General for years was my Pennsylvania number 1510. That is a beautiful Lionel General and one of Lionel's best General that they've ever built. The whistle on that engine sounds much like that of a single-chime Lunkenheimer, almost identical to that of the CK Holiday at Disneyland. It has a very realistic sounding hand-rung bell, beautiful chuff, and a gorgeous paint scheme. It's almost as beautiful as these two. These two are really special models, given that only 650 of these were made. And Lionel really took their time with these guys. And although the Texas may not be completely accurate, she's still a gorgeous engine, whereas the General, you can see, is bang on to how she looks today. And back in 1959, when Lionel made their first post-war General locomotive, it was based off the Western and Atlantic Railroad's General. Now here, we take a look at my Bachmann Spectrum Grizzly Flats Emma Nevada. About an hour away from here is the Orange Empire Railway Museum, and they are in the process of restoring the Emma Nevada locomotive. Right now, the real-life Emma Nevada has all 6 of her drive wheels, as well as her 2 front pilot wheels, dropped out from underneath her. The dome lid has been removed, and I believe they have the steam dome open to look inside the boiler. And she's up on blocks. Also, the cylinder jackets are off of her, and the cylinder head covers have been opened up. That way they can work on the running gear. It's going to be a while before she's up and running again, but they'll get there slowly but surely. You can see that this Emma Nevada is beautifully painted, been beautifully painstakingly replicated down to the very last nut, bolt, and washer. However, there are still a few things that get my goat with the new generation Spectrum 260. Both the old generation Spectrum 260s and the new generation 260s have quite a number of flaws. The biggest flaw in the old generation 260 is the drive gear, as well as the plastic tender trucks. Mechanically, all that is fixed on the new generation 260s. However, when it comes to the electronics in the new generation 260s, the power and ground wires for the tender that go straight to the motherboard computer, the gauge of the wires is way too thin. You run this out in the hot sun, those wires are going to overheat and they will burn off the insulation. Another problem, I have both the coal and wood burning models. I also have the Denver and Rio Grande Raton and the Eureka and Palisade Reveille. It gets really hot given that there's not a lot of ventilation available inside the tender. So what you're looking at here inside the coal load is a layer of liquid electrical tape. What the electrical tape does is absorb some of the heat coming off the electronics. If you don't put the layers of liquid electrical tape, the heat from the electronics is just going to collect in the metal coal load or in the recycled concrete wood load, and it will reflect back on the electronics, cause the electronics to get even hotter, and will cause the Phoenix soundboard to self-destruct. Learned this the hard way when a friend's Phoenix soundboard self-destructed after running out in the hot sun because the soundboard got so hot, the power and ground wires got so hot and literally melted the insulation. So I learned the hard way to put thicker gauge wires for the power and ground wires running from the tender trucks up to the motherboard computer. And at the end of the wiring connector, there's liquid electrical tape to insulate the power and ground wires. And another thing, I also added a cooling fan that's right underneath the water hatch here. I added a cooling fan off the Spectrum Climax to also help keep the electronics nice and cool inside the tender. So, although Bachmann has come a long ways, they really should not be charging an arm and a leg for these models unless they make them completely mechanically and electronically sound. You're paying almost $800 for a beautiful model like this, and why would it be worth it if they're just going to self-destruct? Bad move on Bachmann trains. And I know Sam from Sam's Trains reviews Bachmann trains a lot, and he's very picky when it comes to the mechanics, and rightfully so. He's complained about some of the models not having properly turned metal bearings and very bad mechanisms. However, you don't have to worry about the mechanism on this newer Spectrum model. There are properly turned metal bearings, electrical pickups on all 6 wheels, and on all 8 tender truck wheels. No need to worry about that. This has a beautifully balanced 5-pole can motor. However, it lacks a flywheel, and a flywheel would be nice. Not necessary, but it would be nice. Yet electronically, you have to swap out the wires because if you don't, they're gonna melt. That does not make sense. And your soundboard that you also pay big money for is gonna overheat. Not okay. Bachmann should have been more thoughtful when it came to the fuel load and the consequences that it can result if not properly insulated. I mean, I love the Bachmann Spectrum Moguls. I love them very much. They're gorgeous engines. And when it comes to the decoration, 5 out of 5 star. When it comes to, let's say, I got really good quality. There was nothing damaged, no scratches on this engine or the Raton or the Reveille. So that was a 5 out of 5 star. But when it came to the electronics, bad, bad, bad. That gets a 2 star for for poor design and just not thinking right. Those wires were designed to go in a computer, not in a model train. Because when operating outdoors under high temperatures, there is a lot of electronic heat and overheating, as well as mechanical friction, wear, and evaporation. If you keep the engine well oiled, and especially since this uses Foster bronze gears, you don't have to worry about friction wear if you're keeping up with the lubrication. You don't have to worry about the gears breaking like you do with the older generation Moguls. However, you have to worry about the electronics getting too hot. So they fix one problem only to run into another. Bachmann makes good stuff, but it could be better. It could be better with the Spectrum Mogul. Now that I'm done ranting about some of the flaws of this engine, let's show you the good parts. You can see this beautiful artwork of, hate to say it, naked women on this engine, but again, Ward Kimball wanted to present it as art. You can see the delicate pinstriping, the beautiful stars on the wheel hubs, the beautiful delicate pinstripes on the wheel counterweights and on the spokes of the wheels. You can see beautiful front number plate detail, beautiful rivet detail, beautiful cow catcher. I added the red bell interior since the real life Emma Nevada has a red bell interior. Also, the whistle arm I painted red because the real life Emma Nevada's whistle arm is painted red. You can also see she's got beautiful air compressor and steam jam detail. And right here you can get a better look at some of the wheel detail, and you can see it's just awfully beautiful. Beautiful nameplate of the Emma Nevada. And let's see if we can get a better shot back here in the cab. Oh yes, really good shot of the women on the back of the cab panels. And we may not be able to see very well inside the cab, but you've got a beautiful painted cab in there with throttle gauges, main pressure gauge that's fully painted out, hydrostatic lubricator that's painted out, injector valves that are painted out. Very, very beautiful. Beautiful brake wheel, beautiful lettering of Grizzly Flats Railroad, beautifully blackened machine metal wheels and tender trucks made of die-cast, beautifully painted tender frame. Very, very beautiful. Perfect 5 out of 5 star when it comes to the decoration on this engine, and on the Raton, and on the Reveille, and also the Glenbrook. Although I don't own the Glenbrook, I have worked on the Bachmann Glenbrooks for a friend. Also, we're going to take a look at the big haulers coaches that go with the Emma Nevada. And honestly, when it comes to decoration on the coaches, that is a good 5 out of 5 star. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful artwork on the ends of the top panels of the coaches. Beautifully painted and decorated Grizzly Flats name on top of the coach. Beautiful, beautiful stained glass in the top. Beautiful windows. Beautifully detailed tender trucks. And beautiful interior. And another thing is you get these beautiful metal handrails. However, another thing that gets me on the coaches are these awful wiper pickups. The reason why I am not a fan of them is they brush against the flange of the wheels. This causes drag, and when it causes drag, it robs the locomotive of power. So your engine's pulling power is decreased as the friction is increased on the power pickups. Not to mention the power pickups make quite a mess as they attract dirt and goodness knows what other crud shows up on the track. Not only that, it gets worse. The electrical wires that hook to these pickups, they break right off the solder joints, and your electric lighting on the inside breaks. It stops working. Again, bad move, Bachmann. What they should have done was use stronger wire and have stronger, thicker wire and have the electrical pickups like Pico. What Pico does, and have the pickups brush on the back end of the wheel, lightly brushing on the back of the wheel, and that would have solved the problem. But why do they use these horrible wiper brushes that go on the wheel tread? I don't get. And it got so bad on Coach 5 that I had to convert it to using a 9-volt battery. That seems to have solved the problem by converting it from track power to battery power. That solves the problem. And you can just swap out the battery when they stop working. Plus, when converting it to battery power, you're no longer dealing with those awful wiper pickups that cause drag and rob the engine of power. So, Bachmann, either improve those electrical wiper pickups on your coaches, or just keep the coaches at battery power. I mean, they should have kept them as battery power from the get-go. However, I get enough of the ranting. But from a rating of decoration of the coaches, 5 out of 5 star. Features on the coaches, 5 out of 5 star. The quality, knock it down to a 4 because of those wires. Because of those darn wires, 4 out of 5 star for quality, and just electronics, like the engine, 2 out of 5. Again, they really need to fix the problem with their wires and use better pickups on their coaches. However, when you get the Spectrum caboose, there's hardly any problems with that. That has improved electrical wires. And if you get the Bachmann C19, that has no mechanical problems, no electrical problems. That engine is perfect just the way it is, except for the lousy smoke unit. That's the only thing I can complain about the C19, is the lousy smoke unit. And, yep, that's a thing to complain about on the Moguls too. So here's what I do. I just tear out the old smoke units that come from Bachmann and replace them with the Pico 5-volt smoke unit and the voltage regulator, and I just hardwire the regulator and the smoke units to basic power and ground, which come off the motor. That seems to work. Although there's no way to shut off the smoke unit, it still works just fine as long as you keep filling the stack up with fluid. And it works great. It smokes like a chimney. And it puts on a much better display than it would if it were a stock Bachmann smoke unit. Beautiful engine though. Just wish the electronics were better, and wish they had better smoke units. Mechanically wise and decoration wise, I would not change a thing. Mechanically and decoration wise, I wouldn't change a thing on the coaches either. It all comes down to electronics. However, I've got no complaints on the Lionel Generals, except maybe for the lack of pulling power, but then again, the Lionel General is not a very big and strong model, and these are not meant to pull over 10 coaches like the Bachmann Spectrum Mogul is. And if you want to pull a big load, that's what you get. The bigger engines like a 282 Mikado, 280 Consolidation, or a 484 Northern, or a Mali. That's what you have the bigger engines for. However, these are collector's items, and you're normally going to display these or run one or two cars behind them. So my ratings for the Lionel Great Locomotive Chase set decoration, even though it's not accurate on the Texas, it is 5 out of 5. The mechanism on these, not the greatest, so I would give it a 3 out of 5, but it's very reliable, and on all my Lionel Generals, one is still yet to let me down, so fair to say 3 out of 5. And the features, such as the smoke lamp and the rail sounds, 5 out of 5. And just the build quality that went into these engines, 5 out of 5. I don't have a ranking system like Sam's Trains does, but I might do so in the future. Anyway, overall, you did good work, Bachmann, but there's still room for improvement. Lionel definitely hit it with this. Lionel did a great job with these Generals. And why did I decide to include both the Grizzly Flats train set and the Great Locomotive Chase train set together? It's simple. Both are tied in with Disney. Ward Kimball was a huge collector of trains and a huge fanatic of trains, and the Grizzly Flats Railroad in his backyard is what partially inspired Walt Disney to build Disneyland. And later on, after Disney was built, Walt wanted to do a recreation of the Great Locomotive Chase, and by golly, the Walt Disney Company made a movie on the Great Locomotive Chase and used 2 beautiful engines to replicate the General and the Texas. And both the William Mason and the Inyo are pretty close to replicating those locomotives. The Texas is now on display in a beautifully refurbished history museum in Atlanta, and the General is on display where she's always been in Kennesaw. And if you have the chance to see him, go out and see him. And Emma, Nevada is still in the process of being restored back to service, so go out and see her when you can. She's located in Paris, California. General is once again in Kennesaw, and Texas is in Atlanta. I hope you guys enjoyed this video on my review of these 2 sets. Again, I should state that the Bachmann set of the Grizzly Flats train, it is not coming together. You buy the engine and the coaches separately. Whereas with the Great Locomotive Chase, it's all in one set. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I will post another video of the Emma Nevada in action once after I get both coaches fixed. I need to get another set of lights working on Coach 5, and Coach 3 needs to be converted to battery. Once I've done that, you'll see Emma Nevada and her train in action. Alrighty, hope you've enjoyed this. Hang in there, everyone. We will get through this pandemic. Things are slowly getting better. Chris9017 out.